right. That's definitely loud enough. Okay. Wasn't clear this time. Okay. All right. Well, we are continuing back in our Living on the Mount series. We've been going through the Sermon on the Mount for a matter of months now, and we are nearing the end, and so we are getting to some important rules, some important things to remember, as all of it is important. And the first thing that we should think about is treating others the way they have treated me. That's what we're looking for, right? Is treat others the way I have been treated thusly. And so that's what it's all about, right? That's what this world works towards. And it's only fair if I treat you the way you've treated me. It's only a fair way to do that. And and then certainly if you've treated me poorly, and you've treated me the way that is despicable, or you've hit me, or you got me, I got to get you back. We got to get even. We got to even the score here. If I don't do that, you're going to think I'm some sort of weakling, and you can just take advantage of me. And victory through strength, right? Peace through strength. That's what it's all. Well, when we go about that way, this is usually what it ends in: is a bunch of nuclear warheads going off, right? Like that's our grand fear in living in this way. Is you hit me, I'm gonna hit you, and ultimately we'll hit each other till the point where we ain't here anymore, right? That's really what it leads to in this idea. So when Jesus comes on in his Sermon on the Mount, he says, "So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets." That's the golden rule, right? We know that well. Treat others the way I want to be treated. What a nice statement that is, isn't it? Isn't it just what a really nice thing? Treat each other well and sweet, and it goes all right, but it's not that practical, it's not really reasonable. We can do it maybe on those big things, maybe I can treat you well. You gave me a sheet of cookies, I can give you some cookies back, but when it comes to the real things, right, I'm going to knock you into next week if you hit me, right? Or I'm not going to let things like the big things slide. You steal from me, well, I got to steal from you, right? I got to get my money back, or all those things, right? It's how we kind of look at it. Is it's not such a practical thing to treat people the way I want to be treated. That's the way our culture seems to look at it. And really, it's because it's not really all that practical, and it's this idea that I can only do so much for people, that we really it's this recipe of holding back, really. It's the idea is like, if I was to really treat you the way I wanted to be treated, right, there'd be a lot of gusto in that, because I know how I want to be treated, right? I want things for me, and if that means I got to turn around and give it to you, well then, man, I would probably want to, in gusto, give it to you. And yet, since it's not that practical, since it's not that reasonable that we should really treat people the way I want to be treated, well, then maybe we shouldn't do it. And that leads us to hold back in this notion. At best, we're kind, but really, really it's just nicety, right? You give me this, I might return. Christmas presents are nice. Birthday presents, I'll give you a card if you give me a card, all that sort of thing. So then here's the real question. All right, here's the real question then we have to ask ourselves is, how do we want to be treated? If we're going to answer this question of what it really looks like to put the golden rule into practice, if it's really something that we're going to actually do, we have to know what it is I want to be treated like. Well, I don't want to be punched in the face. Right? I don't want to be robbed, and I don't want to be stabbed. I don't want to be shot. I don't want to be kicked. I don't want to do all those things. Well, that's easy. Then I just don't hit anybody, right? Don't hit anybody. Don't stab anybody. Don't rob anybody. Don't murder. Good. Peace. We're all done, right? Well, that's really what I don't want. So that's not even the rule here. I don't want those things. So of course I'm not going to do what I don't want to other people. But what is it I want to be treated like? Right? We can't answer this question in the negative of what I don't want to happen to me. I have to answer this question in the what I want to be treated like. Well, I want people to give me $1 million. right? That would be nice. I don't know why that's not working, but yeah, that'd be nice if I can get $1 million. I just, people should be giving me money. That'd be great. Just, walking down the street and everybody handing me a wad of cash. That'd be awesome. Well, but I can't afford that because I have to do that first, right? So I have to give the money out, and then I'm broke, and I can't afford something like that. So we could take all the cynical reactions to this that we want to, right? There are endless ways in which we could be cynical about the golden rule and how we should treat others, and really with all those cynical approaches, it's all ways of like, well, I don't really have to obey the golden rule then, right? But let's be honest for just a minute. What is it I want? What is it that I really want? I'm going to tell you something. I want to be treated kindly. I want to be acknowledged as a person, and I want to matter to the people around me. Those are things that I want, if I'm being really honest. Those are things I pretty well desire. I want to matter to the people around me, to be acknowledged, people to treat me kindly. I want those things in my community. And the reality is that when I face that, and I recognize that, man, that's something that really is kind of inward deep that I really want from the people around me, I got to be honest with something. I break that rule good and hard. I break that rule good and hard and fast. And the people that know me best that I break those rules is that part of that is because I am a joker and a kidder, and I really like to dig in terms of my jokes. I like to joke at people like, that's so stupid. Like, you did that silly thing. I'm going to make fun of you for it. I like to do that a lot. And in a way, I think it's funny. I still think it's funny. I'm going to defend that a little bit, but I think it's funny. And it's usually a term in which I do that to you because I feel comfortable enough, and I really do like you. It's just the thing I learned on my sense of humor and how I do that my intent, and this is where we're hitting it, my intent is I like you and I feel comfortable enough to tell you when you're being foolish or when you're being silly or when whatever. I'm obnoxious and I'm ornery. And as much as I think that there's a good place for that, it doesn't always reflect this idea of how I want to be treated, doesn't it? I've hurt feelings before. I've had to apologize for my sense of humor. I'll be honest, it cost me a date once. Wrong joke, wrong time. I'll tell you that story later, but it cost me a date once. It's just, it has a negative effect. It has negative effect on the way, and it breaks this rule that if I want this from people, to be treated, to matter, to be acknowledged, then the idea that I make people feel berated or foolish or silly in my presence tells me I'm not following that rule. I'm not building people around me to matter in a way, and I've had to apologize for that, and I've had to, it's definitely caused people to feel unvalued around me. Some people understand my sense of humor and feel valued. Others don't. All right, I have to be careful about that. So then, when we talk about this idea of what I want, and being honest with that idea of what I want, we can say, okay, that there's this notion here. And if you can read that, I don't know if you can read that very well, but there's this idea here called the platinum rule. And I mean, honestly, I think it's amazing that humans have taken the golden rule and made a platinum rule. Like they can actually, improve on the word of God. Okay, only us could be that arrogant, right? But the platinum rule is not treat people how you want to be treated. It's treat people how they want to be treated. Well, let's get right back into the cynicism right here for a second and say, well, okay, if I commit a crime, I don't want to be punished. Yeah, that's how I want to be treated. Or, if I do something wrong or hurt you, I just want to be left alone. Again, if the platinum rule were true, then that would be how we would treat that. That's how we would respond, and that's how we would look is, well, I want you to feel comfortable with what you're receiving. And so again, yeah, I won't treat you. I won't hit you back for hitting me, or I won't punish you for the crime you committed against me. But here's the question: is that really what we want? And that's the reality of this golden rule ideas. I think there has to be some honesty in this idea. When we take the idea, as I shared with you earlier, right? I want to be acknowledged. I want to matter. I want to feel good in my community. I feel like I matter. Those are some good feeling things. Those are some good. Those are still back in the warm and fuzzy feelings and the drive that we have and kindliness. But here's a reality to this. If we again take that platinum rule into place, we have actually been administering that in our culture, and it's not going very well. If we think about our crime in our country and the way things are going, where people are being treated the way they want to be treated, not the way that you want to be treated. And so if that's the case, then that means that there's a reality of justice and fairness that we need to acknowledge. Okay, that we need to acknowledge. And even when it comes to, when I do things that aren't right, do I still want justice and fairness when I do things that aren't right? I think deep down we want that. Because certainly if it were us, if I was in the shoes of being wronged, then yeah, I want justice and fairness. There are some things that I want to be resolved in a way that might not mean a good feeling for the person next to me. But it is a reality that there are some things that we want, there are some things that we desire that requires righting some wrongs. And when it comes to treating people the way that I want to be treated, when it comes to the notion of you have wronged me and how do I thus treat you, then that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to just give in and give up and let you have your nice, get along without having to deal and be responsible for your actions. There is a reality that we want some things in this world and we want some things to be handled. That doesn't mean we have to give up on justice and equality and the things that we desire and fairness in our community. It doesn't mean we have to be completely run over in that sense. But it does require strength. It requires some strength and character because if we just flat out go into vengeance on some of those things, then we're not treating how we wanted. We're treating on the things of I want retribution. That's revenge. That's not this notion. And so it requires some strength of character to say, I want to correct this. And I'll tell you a story of this because I heard this week that was really interesting. I don't know if you've heard in the news. There was a man who was executed after being in prison for about 26 years. It just happened this week. Apparently, there's a lot of political things around it. Some people are saying how tragic it is. Others are saying, well, this man should have died many years before because he had killed someone pretty brutally. If you're familiar with the case that's out there, I don't even remember the guy's name. I just remember I was hearing a commentator on this, and one of the things he said that I thought was quite despicable was that he's glad this guy is dead. He's like, this guy was a monster. There's no reason he should have been around. He just has this hard line, and he does it because he's hard-lined against this idea of being soft on crime in our culture. But he's glad he's dead. Was a notion there that spoke to me in this sense. This idea that this guy's life, he threw it away and he made the decision, and thus I'm glad that he got what was coming to him. And that's not the spirit by which I'm calling this rule out and how we're supposed to do this. The spirit here is that this man who committed this murder, he committed a horrible tragedy. His life is a tragedy. His life is a tragedy in the sense that he chose evil over good. His life is a tragedy because he caused such pain, and it resulted in the end of his life as well as the life of his victim. It's a tragedy that evil was allowed to happen in this world through this guy's actions. It's a tragedy, and it should be nothing short of that, even if what was treated to him was fairness. Even what was treated to him is justice for what he did. And it's this notion of the strength to say, I can look at a person's situation and say, that is a tragedy that you made those decisions. That's a tragedy that you didn't treat well. It's a tragedy that this has happened. But that doesn't forestall putting to practice what we need to put to practice, which is justice, which is righteousness, which is fairness, which is administering the punishment of the law in its fashions. Again, my point being, right, is that when we talk about honestly desiring the golden rule in our lives, that doesn't mean we make the easy decision to just treat nice and kindly, but it does require some strength of character to do what is right and to put aside our feelings on that sometimes and put aside what I maybe want in excess of how I want to be treated. And so the question really comes: how do I treat someone this way? If I'm honest and I really put that in, and I really gear into this golden rule and this idea that I'm going to treat people the way I want to be treated. I'm going to be honest with those things. I'm going to be really striving for that treatment of other people. How do I do that when again I sometimes I don't feel like doing that. Sometimes I feel like going up way far beyond what someone's done to me in retribution. If my intent for how I want to make people how I want people to feel, my joking makes people feel completely different than my intent, whatever it may be, then I'm wrong. Oh, that's weird. If I intend to treat you well, and you don't get that, and you don't hear that, if that's not the way that that you're receiving what I'm giving, then I'm off somehow. I got to deal with that. I've got to measure that with people. And if that's the case, if I have to, it takes work and empathy and understanding, and I really have to gear in and drive into this. But here's something that it really takes. Okay, this is something that it really requires. It requires an extreme amount of faith. If I'm going to treat someone the way I want to be treated, it takes faith that God's rule is better than what the world says to do. Because the world really does say, treat as you have been treated. Treat in retribution, treat in vengeance, treat to get even, not treat as you would want to be treated. So it takes a lot of faith to put God's rule here into practice, because there is no promise of reciprocation. There is no promise that when you treat others the way you want to be treated, no matter how well it's done, no matter how, in what spirit it's given, no matter in what, whatever angle I just dropped that. I'm going to just come down here and pick that up. Okay. No matter what spirit that's given, it is not a promise that you're going to be treated thusly, that you're going to be treated well. You're going to have people who are going to walk all over that. They're going to abuse that. They're going to treat you like garbage in return. And so when we step out on faith to say, I don't care how you treat me, I'm going to focus on what I know I want for me, and I'm going to focus on giving that to you. That is trusting what God said to do. That is trusting God's promise. That's putting that into action. That's faith in action. So when Jesus says in Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 through 14, he continues this. He says, enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, the way is easy, that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard, that leads to life, and those who find it are few. I think this is paired with the golden rule on purpose. I think this is paired together. Jesus isn't just, saying some cliches and they just happen to throw together. Jesus is saying this on purpose. And when we say something like this, take the easy way or the hard way, this is usually the sign of, well, do it the easy way or it's going to hurt, right? We can do this the easy way or the hard way. That's usually what's said to the hero in the movie. And thus the hero's like, well, let's do it the hard way. And then he gets beat up, right? Like that's usually what happens. And so, we know that, the easy way, this is a way of saying, don't make this too hard for yourself. But the reality is that the easy way leads to ultimate destruction. When we talk about treating people easily, fear is easy. We are treating people not like the golden rule, primarily because we're afraid. If I treat you the way I want to be treated and I don't treat you the way you've treated me, I might hurt for that. It's gonna harm me. It's going to be not reciprocated, and then I'm going to be a doormat. That's fear talking. That's fear talking, and that's easy to live in fear. It's easy to hold back on how we want to treat others, to only give them a piece of how I want to be treated. Only a little bit. As they treat me well, I might treat you well a little bit. It's easy to hold back in that. It is difficult. It is difficult to be honest with one another. It is difficult to do that. And I'm not talking about, telling the truth about maybe some inane thing that happened, but to be honest with, this is what I want from people. This is what I really desire. If I were to really look deep down and really think about what I want from people, how I want to be treated, what my desire is, if I'm really honest about how I really want things from people, it's hard to express that out. It's hard to be honest to say, you know what? I really just want people to acknowledge that I am here. I really just want someone to love me like I matter, to treat me like I matter. It's difficult to say, and you know what? I don't get that a lot, maybe. And maybe it's difficult to express and to be honest with some things that I don't get this often from people. I've been hurt this way, and this is the way I want to be treated because of that. It's hard to acknowledge that. We hide behind things. We hide behind things in order to not be honest with one another. And so when Jesus says, as he says, be treat others as you want to be treated, and then says, don't go the easy way, don't take that easy road. He's saying is because the easy road won't do that rule. It won't apply that rule. And when we talk about trusting in God, he says in Proverbs 3:5-6, right? He says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. When we talk about this idea that putting faith in action, is that Jesus is telling us the rule. He's telling us the solid rule, which is treat others the way you want to be treated. So are we going to trust that that's his wisdom? Are we going to trust that that is what he really means? Are we going to trust that that's what he really wants out of us? Or are we going to find the excuse that says, I don't really have to put that rule into practice. It's not really that big a deal. I don't have to go all the way in on that. I can just do it in pieces, and I only have to do it to a few people. I don't have to do it to those people over there. I mean, are we going to do that, or are we going to stop leaning on that understanding and start trusting that God told us something that works? God told us something that is going to be better in improving our lives. It's going to be better in the way we are able to work for him. That's our ultimate goal, right? Is to work for God and do his ministry. And so Paul expands on this in Romans chapter 13. I think he expands on this concept. In verse 8 through 10, he says, but owe no one anything except to love each other. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, and therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. And so are we thinking that way when we talk about the way we treat others? Is that when we look at what God has given us in the way in which we're supposed to treat one another, Paul's logic here is pretty solid. It says, if you are putting the commandments of God in place, if you're not going to covet your neighbor, if you're not going to commit adultery or if you're not going to do those things, the core principle here is you're not going to wrong your neighbor. You're going to ask the question, does this wrong a neighbor? Does this hurt the person next to me? Does this do damage to the people around me? And you're going to say, you know what? I'm not going to do it on that principle alone, that it hurts someone around me, that it is harmful to the person next to me and might cost them dearly. It might cost them, maybe it'll cost them physically, maybe it'll cost them emotionally, but it could cost them spiritually. Are we doing what costs people their spiritual walk? Are we thinking on those terms? As Christians, we definitely should be thinking on those terms, that the things I do and the ways I act and the way I interact and treat people has spiritual consequences. It has spiritual impact because it could be the price of someone not going to heaven. And I know that's a heavy thing to put on our burden, and that doesn't mean it's solely on your burden that you walk up to that person and you're the only person that's going to ever teach them Christ. But do you want to be that person, the one? Do you want to have the impact that says, I'm not going to follow Christ because of that person right there? I'm pointing at an empty seat, so I don't point at anybody. But okay, yeah, because of that person right there, I'm not going to follow Jesus. Do we want to be like that? Do we want to have that on our character, on our person? I mean, because we'll have to respond to that. That's going to eventually, we're going to have to account for that. And then 1 John 4:10 says this. I'm sorry, 1 John 7 through 9. I keep misquoting the verse here. 4:7 through 9, 1 John says, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. And whoever has loved has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. In this, the love of God has made manifest among us, that God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. And so this idea that I'm going to put this golden rule into practice, again, we can call this the nice thing that it is. We can call it a nicety, and just it can be a way that we can be warm to our neighbors and friendly. But the idea here, right, is we are working in the realm of love. We are working in the realm of love, and the impact that has, we know that it has spiritual impact. We know that it can damage. But we also know, right, we know how it reflects our relationship with God. It reflects on our understanding of God. And if I go around hurting my neighbors, if I go around doing the thing that I know I don't want to do, if I go around doing the thing that harms around me and it doesn't, value the things I want, then it shows that I don't have an understanding of the love of God. I don't have an understanding of what he went through in order to have that spiritual impact, which is to bring people to him. If I don't understand that, if I don't put that into practice, I'm going to have a really hard time putting the golden rule into practice. But if I get it, if I understand it, if I can realize that what I do reflects on my understanding of God, when I know what I do has spiritual impact, not to harm versus harm. If I understand that and put that all into place, then the golden rule should be easy. It should be simple. It should be no problem for us to go around, even with the promise that there's no reciprocation on how you're going to be treated. And easy in the sense that I will make that decision every time. Doesn't mean you get to, have the easy peasy task. It just means it'll be easy to make that choice. So this morning, we need to reflect on that. We need to understand that yes, we want to be treated well, and we need to be honest about the things that we want for ourselves. It's more than those cynical, funny bits. It's the easy parts of it. We need to be honest about what I'm looking for from people, and then we need to be what we're looking for. We need to be that for other people. We need to desire that in the sense that we need to understand the faith it takes to put that into practice. We need to understand the faith that it takes, as well as the faith that it reflects. It reflects our relationship with the Lord. It reflects on how we care about our neighbor. It reflects on our understanding of what's been done for us. If we do that, if we understand that, then the choice is easy to treat others as you want to be treated. The choice is easy in putting that to practice. And this morning, I want you to know is that the first thing I want to be treated with is I want the honesty of what it takes to come to Christ. That takes submitting our lives and repenting and entering into baptism that we might enter into his death to be raised to newness of life. If you have not heard that before, if you have not taken that step before, I am telling you, if I were you, I'd want to know. I'd want to know that that's how I'm supposed to do that. And this morning, if that's the step you need to take, let us treat you the way we want to be treated by helping you get there, helping you find out what that means. But if there's anything else that we can help you with, if there's any way in which we can walk with you and treat you with that loving kindness this morning, let us know, whether publicly or privately, as we stand and sing.